Since we're short of time, I better get right into things. What does free software mean? Free software, software libero, is software that respects the user's freedom. The other case is proprietary software, user subjugating software, non-free software, which keeps the users in a state of division and helplessness. Division because everyone is forbidden to share with everyone else. And helplessness because the users don't have the source code, so they can't change anything. They can't even tell what the program is really doing. And often it's doing something nasty. But free software respects the user's freedom. What does this mean? Specifically, free software means that you have 4 essential freedoms that every software user should always have. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. Freedom 1 is the freedom to study the source code and change it so the program does what you wish. Freedom 2 is the freedom to help your neighbor, the freedom to distribute copies to others, up to and including republication when you wish. And freedom 3 is the freedom to contribute to your community, that is, the freedom to distribute copies of your modified versions, up to and including publication, when you wish. Now, none of these is an obligation. The point is you're free to do any of them when you wish, if you wish. So, if a program gives you these 4 essential freedoms, then it's free software, which means that the social system of the distribution and use of the program is an ethical system. But if one of these freedoms is substantially missing, then the social system of the program's distribution and use is unethical. And this is a social problem, which we in the free software movement aim to correct. Proprietary software should not exist. It's not a contribution to society. It's an attack on society, a kind of trap that sets up a system of power that is unjust. But why are these 4 freedoms essential? Why define free software this way? Freedom number 2, the freedom to help your neighbor, the freedom to distribute copies of the program when you wish, is essential on basic moral grounds. If you use a program that doesn't give you freedom number 2, then you are in danger at any moment of falling into a moral dilemma. Whenever your friend says, "That's a nice program, could I have a copy?" in that moment, you will be faced with a choice between 2 evils. One evil is to give your friend a copy and violate the license of the program. The other evil is to deny your friend a copy and comply with the license of the program. Once you're in the dilemma, you ought to choose the lesser evil, which is to give your friend a copy and violate the license of the program. What makes this evil the lesser evil? When you're in a situation where you can't help doing some kind of wrong to somebody, it's better to do wrong to somebody who deserves it. Now, we can assume that your friend is a good person and a good friend and deserves your cooperation. Of course, there are also people who are not good friends and not good members of your community, and that case is easy. You just say, "Why should I help you?" But the other case exists too, the case where it's a good member of your community, a good friend, and you normally ought to cooperate with him. Whereas the developer of the proprietary program has deliberately attacked the social solidarity of your community. So if you've got to do wrong to one or the other, do it to the developer. However, to be the lesser evil does not mean it's good. It's never good to make an agreement and then break it. Of course, there are some agreements which are inherently evil, and keeping them is worse than breaking them. This is one example. But it's never good to make the agreement and break it. And if you give your friend a copy of this program, what will he have? He will have an unauthorized copy of a proprietary program. And that's a pretty bad thing. It's almost as bad as an authorized copy. So what you should really do when you understand this dilemma is make sure you're never in it. That's what the proprietary software developers recommend. The other way is don't use proprietary software. If you don't use any software that denies you freedom number 2, you will never be in this dilemma. That's my solution. I refuse to use proprietary software, no matter how convenient or attractive it is. If somebody offers me a program but says I have to promise not to share it with you, I will say, my conscience does not allow this. So take your program and throw it in the toilet. The most vital resource of any society is not a physical resource, it's a psychosocial resource. It's the spirit of goodwill, the spirit of helping your neighbor. The level of this resource makes the difference between a livable society and a dog-eat-dog jungle. So what does it mean when powerful social institutions say that it's wrong to help your neighbor? What are they doing? They're poisoning this vital resource, something that no society can afford. And what does it mean when they say that if you share with your neighbor, you're a pirate? What are they saying? They're trying to equate helping your neighbor with attacking ships. Nothing could be more false than that, because attacking ships is very, very bad, but helping your neighbor is admirable. And what does it mean when they impose harsh punishments on people for sharing with their neighbors? How much fear is it going to take before you are too scared to share with your neighbors and they are too scared to share with you? This campaign of terror must be stopped. Thus, governments should legalize sharing. Laws to forbid sharing are an injustice. So that's the reason for freedom number 2, the freedom to help your neighbor, the freedom, in this case, to distribute exact copies of the program to others when you wish. Freedom 0, the freedom to run the program as you wish, is essential for a different reason, so you can have control of your own computing. It may be surprising to learn that there are proprietary programs that restrict even the use of authorized copies. They may restrict who can run them or on which computer or how many people, or for how long, or for what purpose. This is obviously not having control of your own computing. So freedom zero is essential, but freedom zero is not enough, because that just means you can do or not do whatever the developer already decided to let you do. So the developer still has power over you, but instead of exercising it through a license, the developer exercises it by deciding what the program will do. Thus, to have control of our own computing, we also need freedom number one, the freedom to study the source code and change it so the program does what you wish. With this freedom, you decide instead of the developer imposing it on you. If you don't have freedom one, you can't even tell what the program is doing. And many proprietary programs have malicious features designed to spy on the user or restrict the user, even attack the user. For instance, spying is quite common. One proprietary program that you might have heard of that spies on the user is called Microsoft Windows. When the user of Windows, and I won't say you because I'm sure you wouldn't use a program like this, when the user of Windows uses the menu feature to search her own files for a word, Windows sends a message saying what word was searched for. That's one spy feature. And when Windows XP asks for an upgrade, it sends Microsoft a list of all the programs installed on the machine. That's another spy feature. Microsoft did not announce the existence of these spy features. People had to figure them out. There's no guarantee that we have found them all. There may be other spy features that we don't know about. But spying is not limited to Windows. Windows Media Player also spies on the user. It reports whatever the user looks at. But please don't think that only Microsoft, the great Satan, would do a thing like this, because Real Player spies on the user the same way. And I think Real Player did it first because Microsoft doesn't normally invent things, it imitates them. Spying is pretty nasty, but there's also worse. There is the functionality of refusing to function. And I'm not talking about errors here. This is an intentionally implemented refusal to serve the user. When the program says, I don't want to let you look at this file, even though it's on your computer. I don't want to let you copy part of this file, even though it's on your computer. I don't want to print this file for you because I don't like you. And I'm here to control you, not to serve you. That's what those programs say. This is also known as Digital Restrictions Management, or DRM. The intentional feature of refusing to function for you. And because this practice is so common and so nasty, we have a special campaign of protests against it. At the site defectivebydesign.org. Go to that site and sign up, and you can participate in our protests. We've had people protesting in front of Microsoft announcements, in front of Apple stores, in front of movie theaters. Join in the protests. People should all learn that software by many different companies is being designed to restrict them, and that the developers are their enemies. Windows Vista is a tremendous advance in restricting the user. That's what it's designed for. That's its purpose. In fact, the reason why Windows Vista makes people throw away a lot of their hardware is that hardware wasn't designed for the purpose of restricting the user. So we have a site called badvista.org that urges people not to use Vista, even if they're not ready to escape to the free world yet. At least they shouldn't let Microsoft tighten the chains on them. Badvista.org shows people what a bad prospect is in store for them if they use Vista. But malicious features even go beyond restricting the user. There is also the malicious feature designed to attack the user, backdoors. One proprietary program that you may have heard of that has a backdoor is called Microsoft Windows. You see, when Windows asks for an upgrade, Microsoft knows more or less the user's identity, and that enables Microsoft to deliver to him an upgrade designed specifically for him, which means Microsoft can take total control of that user's computer, and the user can't do anything about it. This backdoor we know about because we can deduce it from known facts. But it may not be the only one. A few years ago in India, I was told that they had arrested some programmers working on development of Windows and accused them of working also for Al-Qaeda, installing another backdoor that Microsoft wasn't supposed to know about. They probably figured they could get away with it because even inside of Microsoft, not that many people get to look at the source code. But they were caught, so apparently this attempt failed. Was there another that succeeded? We have no way of checking. But we do know that Microsoft installed a backdoor for the use of an even more violent terrorist organization, the United States government. This was discovered in 1999, that a backdoor had been installed in some piece of server software for the use of the NSA. We don't know, as far as I've heard, what it did. And we don't know whether current versions have such backdoors because we can't check. So this shows us that you can't ever trust a non-free program. Every non-free program demands blind faith. Just trust me software. And it's blind faith because without freedom number one, we have no way of checking for malicious features. So there are some proprietary programs in which people have found malicious features. And then there are other proprietary programs in which no malicious features have been found yet. Maybe there are malicious features or maybe not, but we can never be sure there are none. The only way we can ever be sure is when we find some. So no proprietary program without freedom one can ever deserve trust. But what about those that don't have malicious features? We can't be sure which ones they are, but I expect there are. What about them? Their developers are human, so they make mistakes. Their code has bugs. And the user of a proprietary program without freedom one is just as helpless faced with an accidental bug as she is faced with a deliberate malicious feature. If you use a program without freedom number one, you're a prisoner of your software. Now, we free software developers are human too. We also make mistakes. Our code has errors too. The difference is, if you come across an error in our code, you can fix it. You're free to change what you don't like in our code. We can't be perfect, but we can respect your freedom, and that makes all the difference. So the only way we can really take control of our computing is to do it working together, cooperating. And for this we need freedom 3, the freedom to contribute to your community by distributing copies of your modified versions when you wish. This is what enables us to work together. Suppose there are 1 million users of a certain free program who would like a certain change. We can expect a few thousand of them know how to program. And sooner or later, a few of them will make the change, publish their modified version, and then all the million can then install that version and get the change they wanted. And most of them didn't have to write it themselves. Most of them wouldn't have known how to write it themselves, but they still get it because somebody wrote it. And that's all it takes. Thus, all the users get the benefit of the 4 freedoms. Every user can exercise freedom 0, the freedom to run the program as you wish. Every user can exercise freedom 2, the freedom to copy it and distribute the copies. You don't need to know how to program to do these things. Freedoms 1 and 3 entail programming. So only programmers, or more precisely, any given person can exercise freedoms 1 and 3 only to the extent he knows how to program. And do note that this is not a binary question. Just as many people learn to do some maintenance on their cars without learning enough to be a professional mechanic, and this is very useful, so many people can learn to do easy programming jobs, to do easy changes, and this is quite useful even if you don't learn enough to be a professional programmer. But nonetheless, any given person can exercise these freedoms only to the point he knows how to program. But when programmers do this and publish their modified versions, everybody gets to run them or not, whichever you wish. And the result is democracy. A free program develops democratically under the control of its users. The users decide what it's going to do. They don't do this through elections. Instead, they do this by participating in changing the program or choosing between the versions. Everybody can participate as much as she wishes in the social decision about what the program will do in the future. Those who are content and don't care very much, they won't participate. They don't have to. They'll just accept what other people do until the day comes when they see something they really can't stand. And then they can participate in deciding to do it a different way. So the sum total of all the decisions that people make is society's decision. If a lot of people want progress in this direction, people will often make changes going in this direction and we'll get faster progress. If only a few people want progress in this direction, then occasionally we'll get changes going in this direction. And if nobody wants changes in this direction, the program won't go in this direction because nobody has the power to force anybody else to accept it. By contrast, a proprietary program develops under the power of its developer and imposes that power on all the users. If the developer wants to put in a malicious feature, he does, because he knows that the users can't take it out. The only thing they could possibly do is escape. And maybe all the competing programs have the same malicious feature and there's no place to escape to. If the developer wants the program to be incompatible, he makes it incompatible, realizing that the users can't change it to be compatible. So where free software brings democracy, proprietary software brings dictatorship. Those posters look suspiciously like posters for a program with digital restrictions management. I better double check. Oh, but it's not. Interesting, it must be a parody. Interesting. Well, that's nice. I couldn't see the word on it. Okay, very good. We were giving out stickers that show a person handcuffed by the cable of an iPod, because the iPod has digital restrictions management. You see, it's not just Microsoft that's evil. Now, what happens if there are just 1,000 people who want a certain change in a free program and none of them knows how to write it? They can still take advantage of the 4 freedoms to get what they want. Here's how. They can get in communication with each other and start an organization. And the idea is, to be a member, you pay dues. So they all pay dues, and this way the organization gets money to pay programmers to make the change. So if it's a medium-sized change and it needs a programmer to work for a month, maybe they need $10,000. So they ask everybody, pay $10 to join. That's not much money. So they join, and this way they can pay for the change to be made. So this shows you how free software business works, at least one way, because there are many different ways. It's important to remember that free here is free as in freedom, not as in price. So think of free speech, not free beer. It may be clearer in Italian when you say software libero, because that word, I gather, doesn't mean gratis. The free software movement is not at all against business. It's not against profit, as long as the business respects other people's freedom. But we are against the idea that the desire to make a profit can justify mistreating other people, an idea which business today seems to frequently advocate. Now, one of the advantages of free software is that it brings with it a free market for all kinds of support and service. The support... Oh, shame. So the support for a proprietary program is Oh, by the way, you should defenestrate that computer. There are two ways to defenestrate a computer. Either kick Windows out of the computer, or either kick Windows out of the computer or throw the computer out the window. So, support for a proprietary program is normally a monopoly. Only the developer has the source code, so only the developer can change or fix anything. The user who wants a change has to beg and pray, "Oh, almighty developer, please make this change for me." Sometimes the developer says, "Pay us and we'll listen to your problem." If the user does this, the developer says, "Thank you, in 6 months there will be an upgrade. Buy the upgrade and you'll see if we fixed your problem, and you'll see what new problems we have in store for you." But with free software, anyone that has a copy can study the source code, master it, and begin offering support. So we have a free market. And therefore, all those organizations that use software and say that good support is essential for them, if they are rational, they ought to insist on free software so that they get a free market for support. Now, this fact leads to an interesting paradox. Usually when there's a choice between products, we say there's no monopoly. But if it's a choice between proprietary software products, yes, there's monopoly. The user who chooses this proprietary product, proprietary software product, falls into this monopoly for support. But if the user chooses this proprietary software product, he falls into this monopoly for support. So it's a choice between monopolies. And the only way to escape from monopoly is to escape from proprietary software, to escape to the free world. And that is exactly what the free software movement is all about. We want everyone to escape to the free world. Our goal is the liberation of cyberspace and everyone in it. The free world is the new continent that we have built in cyberspace. Because it's a virtual continent, there is room for everyone. And because there were no indigenous peoples in cyberspace, we didn't displace any. It's impossible to live in freedom in the old world of cyberspace, where every program has its feudal lord who bullies the users. Of course, some lords bully the users more and some bully the users less, but the point is there shouldn't be lords over users of software. Users should be free. And this is why it's not enough to have a choice between proprietary programs. Freedom does not mean freedom of choice. Freedom to choose between a few fixed alternatives is just a tiny little bit of freedom. Freedom means having control of your own life. And when you use software, it's not enough to have a choice between proprietary programs. To be able to choose between proprietary programs is being able to choose your master. Freedom means not having a master. Freedom, when you use computers, means not using proprietary software. In 1983, I reached the conclusion that I wanted to work to make it possible to use a computer in freedom. But how? I was just one man and not particularly famous, except among the users of Emacs. So, I knew that most people didn't agree with me. Most people thought proprietary software was normal if they used computers at all. So I didn't think I could convince governments to change their laws or convince companies to change their policies. What could I do? I thought of a way that I could correct this social problem through technical work. The reason it was impossible to use computers in freedom was that all the operating systems were proprietary. And the computer won't run without an operating system. So it was literally impossible to run a computer without giving up your freedom. But I was an operating system developer. If I couldn't convince the developers of the existing operating systems to liberate them, I could write another. So I could develop an operating system, make it free, and that way everyone would be able to use computers in freedom by running that operating system. Once I realized this, that I'd found a way to use my technical skills to correct this social problem, I concluded that I had been elected by circumstances to do this job. I was aware of a social problem which most people didn't recognize as a problem. I had the skills necessary to try to solve it, and probably nobody else would do it if not me. So it was my duty as a citizen to try. It's as if you saw somebody drowning and you know how to swim and nobody else is around and it's not Bush. Or Berlusconi il Ducino.
Facciamo che è l'ultimo applauso, se no non riusciamo a farlo finire.
What?
So maybe we should go faster.
Well,
because,
I can't go much faster.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.